Hey everyone, I'm Rather Incoherent. I just wrapped up the dream side of Dream Eaters, with Daryl as my main cluever running a clue dropping archetype alongside a fighter Leo. I'll talk about that deck later today in another video, but for now let's focus on Daryl. Daryl is, in my opinion, the strongest character in the game. I thought that previously when I ran a different build of him off the channel, funnily enough in Dream Eaters on the other side, on webside. On my website Daryl deck, this is a much more tempo-focused deck with Hawkeye's Old Hearings 3, very little setup. I'm running the Scavenging True Survivor combo. This really should be a Charisma and 2 Mr. Rooks. I just wanted to try out Scavenging to recur Hearings, and True Survivor, the pseudo-infinite with Shadow Light and Resourceful. It's a really cool combo, but it didn't really improve the deck very much, and much earlier in the build you'd be better off getting an early Charisma with Mr. Rooks instead of this. The deck is very low on soak. My experience on website was that you really didn't need more than that, but my experience in Dreamside is you definitely want Mr. Rooks. Pretty much everyone who can get Mr. Rook does want them, but that gets especially true in the Clue Dropper archetype. For this deck to really get off the ground and start going fast, you're going to need Quick Studies and Press Pass, and most importantly, 2 copies of Research Notes. That way every time you drop a clue, you get 2 evidence, 1 on each Research Note, and essentially you're creating more clues. Instead of dropping clues, you're gaining 1. You just have to go through the rigmarole of actually picking it back up again. And because there's so many individual pieces of that combo, you really want Mr. Rook to accelerate how quickly you draw through your deck, and more importantly, make sure you hit the right cards when you need them. This is generally a much more setup-heavy deck, and it's much slower in terms of tempo. Its overall clue finding power is, I would say, a good chunk lower, like substantially. I'd like to reiterate, I think Daryl is the best character in the game. I think tempo Daryl is somewhere around a Rex Murphy in terms of how quickly and how many clues they get. So when I say Clue Dropper Daryl gets a lot less clues, it does, but it's still like a Daisy or a Norman or a Trish. It's still getting a very high amount of clues. Coming back to the final version of the Daryl deck, Clue Dropper isn't just getting a lot of clues, it's synergizing with Daryl's ability. The coolest thing about Daryl is you use his ability, you use Lucky level 3, you use Analysis, and you use William T. Mailson especially to really mitigate how threatening the Mythos deck can be to your teammates. You can force your teammates to pass certain checks, or in the instance of using Gumption or his ability, turn Rotting Remains into max 1 damage, or rather 1 horror. So Daryl has a lot of inherent team utility like that. William T. Mailson is the best Mythos resistance card in the game. He's up, like if there wasn't broken tier in terms of Mythos mitigation, there would only be 2 cards in it. One is Gloria's Investigator card and the other is William T. Mailson. When you draw an encounter card from the encounter deck, you can exhaust Mailson, drop a clue, and draw a second one. You pick 1 card to resolve, and then instead of shuffling the other one back in, you discard it. And that's a really important thing. You can draw an elite card from the encounter deck, and then have Mailson just draw a second card and discard the elite element. I finished Where the Gods Dwell, the finale to Dreamside, with like 7 full turns to spare, and that is a scenario that I, as well as many other people, think needs an additional agenda for the final optional boss, which I did fight in that ending. No small part of that is that when I would draw the Dole or other big enemies, I'd be like, no, we didn't draw that. That didn't happen. We didn't have to waste time killing them. So Mailson is insanely strong for letting you not fight cards, canceling Ancient Evils, replacing a thing that deals horror damage with a thing that deals health damage on a character that's weak to one and strong to the other. Mailson is going to get huge amounts of value, because every time you're using him, you get an action during your turn and a clue eventually, right? It's absolutely nuts how well this works. And when you find yourself in scenarios where you actually have more evidence than you need, you know the end is coming up, you're never going to use all the evidence on the research notes. Because basically, the longer the scenario goes, the more evidence you have. It just steadily increases every turn as you drop clues with Quick Study and Mailson. On somebody like a Daisy, that's just wasted tempo. There's nothing to do with it. You can't capitalize on them. But on a Daryl, with his ability, you just start throwing them out like candy. Somebody's like, I'm going to attack at up 2. It's good enough. You're like, no, you beat the -3 and the -4. It's fine. I've got evidence. The amount of team support you get out of a Clue Dropper Daryl is tremendously higher than the amount you get out of Tempo Daryl. This deck is a better clue finder, unambiguously. It is very strong. It still has a lot of team utility. This is the deck I originally played when I said Daryl was the best character in the game. I think this deck is better. I think it's a worse clue finder. You can't really make a middle ground between the two, because research notes don't investigate, making Shadow Light really awkward. Where do you make cuts? It's very awkward to try to find a middle ground that really uses difficulty 0 and Clue Dropper simultaneously. In my eyes, you do have to make a decision about which one you want to play, and in my eyes, this one's just nuts. The amount of team support this has, while just absolutely demolishing its role with relative ease, is absolutely wild, and I still very thoroughly think Daryl is the strongest character in the game. Coming down to the level 0 decks, you can see for the Clue Dropper level 0 deck, I've got research notes, but I've also got Hawkeyes. These research notes are dead cards. They're useless. You'll notice the deck cannot drop clues. So if we were to come over to the tempo version, you would see a really similar deck. And like I said, this deck should have Mr. Rooks. It should have taken In the Thick of It for Charisma for Mr. Rook. And once you make that change, they're basically the same deck. This second deck is running Live and Learn over Crack the Case and needs more economy. It's pretty much the same list, right? They're almost identical. I think that the difference in Clue Dropper Daryl at low levels and Website Daryl at low levels is that instead of having an old keyring, Clue Dropper has a completely dead research notes in Scenario 1. And then you get your first couple scenarios of experience, and Dreamside it's just gonna be one scenario, and you just buy the clue dropping stuff. You get Press Pass, you get Mail Send, you get 2 quick studies, and you're off to the races. From there, you just need to capitalize on draw and make sure you're getting your cards as fast as possible, getting online, doing the stuff. I think Daryl's just a ridiculously strong character. The first time I saw him, I was worried about his Mythos resistance, and that's just not really a concern. As a Seeker with access to Mr. Rook, you have Expendable Soak. You're not going to have to worry about dying. And especially unless you get super unlucky, you will have evidence, and you will be able to make these Mythos resilient stats functionally incredible instead of just okay. I think Daryl is an absolutely wonderful character. And in that final scenario where I crushed it, where it was not even close, I got no evidence. I didn't get evidence. Clue dropping never came online. That didn't happen. I just used the basic Seeker skills and Daryl's ability to walk through this scenario, because there weren't that many clues to get. So instead, I just got the clues that you did need with deduction, and then used Daryl's ability with what little evidence I was able to generate to help me do scenario critical tests. Daryl is an incredibly strong character no matter how you build him, but I do legitimately think that this build of Daryl, Clue Dropper Team Support Daryl, is the best way to build him, because having Lucky level 3 as a pseudo priority upgrade is really nice. And it really is not an expensive deck. I don't know how to make it much more expensive than this. You get nothing left to lose, so that's 38 over the second Crack the Case. And then from here, any upgrades you make do cost you something that was already incredible. I'm gonna wrap it up now. Daryl is not only the strongest investigator in my eyes, but he has multiple different builds that are the strongest investigator. And is also one of the most fun characters to play. Playing him two-handed is kind of frustrating, because I'll constantly forget that I need to take the photo, because I'm managing the other character during their Mythos phase. I'm not thinking about the stupid Kodak. And that's just a minor frustration when you're playing two-handed. But outside that, Daryl is probably one of my favorite characters to play. Clue Dropper Daryl and Tempo Daryl, wherever Tempo Daryl's got into. Where did Tempo Daryl get to? Don't worry about it, you saw the list earlier. They're both really fun in very different ways. If you're attracted to tempo decks, you'll love Tempo Daryl. If you're attracted to setup decks, you'll love Clue Dropper Daryl. He is powerful in the fun, engaging kind of ways, because you're constantly looking for ways to get and leverage evidence. He's a really broken Seeker survivor that is really engaging to play, really, really powerful. I'm going to be very sad when they inevitably nerf him, and I'm going to be even sadder if they don't nerf him. That's my final opinion on Daryl. The guy's nuts. Try him out if you haven't. If you had a mild to low opinion on Daryl when you saw him, try him again. Something went terribly wrong. Anyways, that's it for now. If you enjoyed this brief review of the Daryls I've played in Dream Eaters, then like, comment, subscribe. All that stuff really does help the channel grow. And I'll see you in the next one.